Good morning, class. Happy Sunday. I'm Sister Monica. Happy to be back with you. And for today's lesson, we're going to talk about Jesus' first miracle. In our last two lessons that were taught by Sister Madeline, we had lesson 3, that was the Word became flesh, and that was found in John 1 1 through 14. And that talks about the Word instead of it just being written down. This was actually flesh, and the flesh that it became was Jesus. And then the lesson after that she taught you, which was lesson 4, that was Jesus calls Philip and Nathaniel. So he got two more disciples, because we know that he had a total of 12. So he has two more within Philip and Nathaniel. And so we're going to pick up, we're still in John, and now we're in John chapter 2, going from verse 1 through 11. And like I said, this is Jesus' first miracle. It is important. We know that Jesus got baptized by the Holy Ghost. And so he's now coming into what his purpose is. And so the steps that we see with his journey of him being baptized and him actually having his followers or his disciples, the actual steps are extremely important. As I've told you before, God always prepares us when he calls us, no matter who he calls. The numerous people that he called to do his work, such as Noah and Abraham, or the prophets such as Elijah, that he called, they all had steps. Everyone had steps. And so there is no greater person or no great example. And there's no exception to the rule when it comes to Jesus. Although I have called you and I have endowed you with power, I still have steps for you to get to your end result. And so here we are going to see Jesus' first miracle. So we're going to start off, as I said, John chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 1 through 2. And it says, "And the third day there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus was called and his disciples to the marriage." So we see here that that Jesus is in a social event. Okay, and we see here that his mother, Mary, was here as well. And we see here time and time again how Jesus and God gives us examples on how it is important that, yes, you are to do my work. Yes, you are to do what thus I tell you to do, but you also need to rest. We know that God rests on the seventh day after creating the heavens and the earth. And so here we see that Jesus, yes, he does have an assignment. He does have things to do, but you are to socially engage with others. And the reason why it's important for us to socially engage with other people, you will not always be able to witness to someone who needs witnessing to within the church. Sometimes you're going to have to go to where they are at. And this is where we have to go. So we can't just limit where we witness to. We can't just put ourselves in a box. I can only witness between the hours of 8 and 6 on Sunday because that's just what it is. No, we're going to have to go ahead and go to them. You may actually miss an opportunity to witness with someone or fellowship with someone who does not know of God. Verses 3 and 4. "And when they wanted wine, the mother of Jesus said unto him, They have no wine. Jesus said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not yet come." So we see here, you may not think, okay, well, they ran out of wine. Okay, you guys need to drink soda, water, whatever the case may be. That was not the case in Jewish hospitality, especially at this time. For a wedding to run out of wine, they did not have options of other beverages, if you will, at this time. And so for them to run out of wine is an issue. And so Mary comes to her son, but she recognizes him for who he is, which is very important. Um, and to tell him that, the party has ran out of wine. Now the response that Jesus gave her, saying, Woman, what have I to do with thee? I would never address Quilisalis as woman. Unless I want to die. But this was not a term of disrespect. In fact, in this culture and at this time, that was a term of endearment. So he was not disrespecting his mother nor this woman. He was actually, that is how they refer or how they are to greet their parent. It's odd to us. Like I said, I'm not going to try and pull Miss Salis back to biblical times. I don't want to get beat up. But that's just what, so we're not going to look at this term woman as disrespect. Now, when Jesus states, "Mine hour is not yet come," you have to realize that he's just now entering into his mission. Jesus is just now walking into what he has to do. He's just now gathering his disciples. He has not yet gone out and taught and has these multitudes, and remember, he's just at the beginning, so he's not yet ready, and it's not yet time to reveal who he is. You can always have an idea. Remember, you had the group that came up to John inquiring on who he was. Are you the Messiah? Are you Elisha? Are you the prophet? So people knew of who the Messiah was. They knew of who Jesus was. They did not know who he was. So it was not time for him to reveal his glory and his awe. Although Mary, from the time of conception, knew exactly what this blessing was. She knew who Jesus was. That's why she came to him. But he had to tell her, hey, my hour has not yet come. And so we move on to verse 5. It says, his mother said unto the servant, whatsoever he say unto you, do it. She did not pull the I am your mama rank. Okay? She didn't pull, I told you to do something, you need to do it. Why? Because she recognized and she respected Jesus for who he was. She understood that this is not my child. I can't instruct him to do as I say. He has a divine purpose that is a hierarchy. It's higher than what a mother-son relationship is. He has things to do, and he has to do them in just time. She also had faith in God, and she had faith in her son. She respected him. And so she made her servants respect him as well. She put her faith in her son. Now, whatever he decides to do, whether he decides to get us out of this peril situation of, not having any wine, or if he decides to sit back and just watch whatever occur, I believe that he will do the right thing. And so this is a great example of putting your faith in God no matter what, without having an attitude, without having any rebuttal. She had no rebuttal to Jesus. Although she was his mother, she understood his purpose. We have to understand God's purpose. It's not ours. He does not see things the way that we see it. Some things that we see as dire, as you know what? I saw it as dire that my packages weren't coming on time. That's not dire. God has a divine purpose, and he had someone that he had chose, which was Jesus, and Mary respected. We have to respect God's timing. Now, moving on to verses 6 and 7. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins, apiece. And Jesus said unto them, fill the water pots with water. And they filled them up to the brim. Now, these water pots were common in Jewish households at this time. Jewish rituals were to cleanse yourself or purify yourself. So there were large, just imagine huge basins or vases of water, if you will, just laying around the home. And the Jewish people, it's not so much cleansing yourself for hygiene as it is as you washing your hands or washing your arms from any impurities that they may have picked up dealing with Gentiles. Remember, at this time, Gentiles, of course, were not the chosen ones. They were not the ones chosen by God or by Jesus. They were not pure. They were not seen as pure. Heathens, if you will, they were not seen as this way. So if a Jewish person were to interact with a Gentile, whether they touched them or not, they were to purify and cleanse themselves. That's what these pots were. These pots were so large, they could hold up about 20 or 30 gallons of water at one time. And so if you see 6 pots like that, it states here that you have between 120 to 180 gallons of water you can fit within these 6 pots. And I'm sure that moving just one pot, 20 to 30 gallons, was not an easy task. You're doing this around a wedding party. What we think about as wedding parties now are not the same as wedding parties then. And so Jesus told the servants, fill them up with water. I know that they are for the ritual cleaning, but fill them up with water. And once again, we see here that there was no hesitation. The servants did just that. Very important. We have to stop hesitating when God tells us to do something that is out of the ordinary, to use these ritual pots that we use for cleansing ourselves. And now we're going to use these with just some water in here. We're going to serve people out of these ritual pots. It's unheard of. But God will always do the unthinkable to go ahead and get to the end result. So, verses 8 and 9. And he said unto them, draw out now, and bear it unto the governor of the feast. And they bear it. And when the ruler of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, the governor of the feast called the bridegroom. So, once the water was pots, Jesus said, all right, now draw it. I want you to draw it, scoop it out. You're going to put it into smaller containers. You're going to go ahead and serve the party. But first, I want you to serve the governor. The governor of the party now would be the person or the matriarch or the, how can we say it? It would be the person who actually oversees the party as of now. The important person need to know, are the guests happy? Is the food coming out in time? Is the music right? The DJ right? Is everyone in the right place? Are the servants being prompt when people have requests? That would be your governor now. So the governor, when the governor drank of this wine, um, he went ahead and called the bridegroom because he couldn't believe, hey, you guys, what's going on here? But he called him for a good reason. Verses 10 and 11, and saith to him, every man at the beginning doeth set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, then that which is worse. But thou hast kept good wine until now. Then began of miracles did Jesus in Cana of Galilee, and manifest forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. So what the governor was saying is that typically within this tradition, they set forth the good wine. And the reason why it's important to have wine in general is that these weddings were a sign of your status. To run out of wine is embarrassing. Weddings last typically around this time for 5 or 7 days. It wasn't just one day, you have a reception, that's it. This was an actual celebration. It lasts for days and days and days. So to have good wine available for days and days and days, and then at the end or coming towards the close of the ceremony, to put forth the lesser was typical. But it says here that it was great. This was the best. I can't believe it wasn't that they were disappointed. They just couldn't believe that you saved the best for last. We hear it all the time. Save the best for last. Save the best for last. This is what Jesus does. He never does things halfway. He's going to go ahead not only meet your expectations, but supersede your expectations. That's with everything. But Jesus wouldn't have done this, one, if Mary would have pulled the mom card. Two, if the servant she instructed gave pushback when they were filling these ceremonial pots. You have to put your faith. This shows us put your faith no matter what happens. You're going to have to be satisfied with the outcome that God gives. It doesn't matter. Just because you ask does not mean that He has to fulfill your request. We have to be okay with that. But just know that when your request is filled, it's not only going to blow your mind, it's going to blow the minds of others who are around to see it. So, this miracle that was performed may seem minute to you, and of course, of all things, wine. But we have to remember God has never encouraged us to get drunk. As I stated, at this time, wine was really the only source. Water was hard to purify. As I stated, there were no sodas to drink. You didn't have milk just readily available for you. There was no lemonade. There was no fruit juices. That's not how this worked. So you had wine. But let's be very clear that God has never encouraged us to get drunk. There's a difference. The alcohol content was not high, so it wasn't, let's keep the party going. Jesus, go ahead and turn that water into wine because the party's getting a little stale. No, that wasn't it. So, what Proverbs 20:1 says is that wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. So, he was not doing this to get them drunk. Let's make that very clear. This was, as I stated, something that was a custom. This is something that if you were to run out of wine, it would be extremely embarrassing. And this was the readily available drink at the time. That's it. This was not the wine that we think of today. So we see that Jesus, although it was not his time to reveal himself, he didn't fully reveal himself. And the only ones who knew of this actual miracle were Mary, the disciples, the servants, and Jesus. Those were the only ones who knew of this miracle. So he did not reveal himself totally, but he did fulfill a request of his mother. And I believe it wasn't because it was his mother. It was because she put total faith in who he was and who God sent him to be. That is what we take away from this. God, we have to trust. Just because we send up our cry to you, Lord, does not mean you have to answer it. And it does not mean that we will have an attitude moving forward. What it means is that we sent out a request, but I'm still going to believe in you. And I'm still going to give joy, thanks, and honor no matter what the outcome. And look at God, the outcome just wasn't that you gave wine. Lord, you gave your best. And for that, I say thank you. That was Jesus' first miracle. And that miracle we need to hold on to because no matter what, Lord, I say thank you. Sunday, guys.